Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. Stephanie, is it just me? Or do you think Biden is literally trying to start World War III?
Oh my God. So I woke up yesterday and I'm like, it's the age of Aquarius because officially, like, yesterday's the
Yes.
day. And then I see that and I'm like, what? Like, this isn't what's supposed to happen. And I'm like freaking out and stuff. But then I remembered like part of it is that old structures and systems have to collapse and like the truth is being revealed. And so I feel like it's all gonna get messy in the beginning, but like good will come after. So I don't know. But yeah, I was an emotional wreck yesterday about all of this.
Yeah, I was reading a bunch of stuff about the age of Aquarius since Pluto moving into Aquarius and the same thing that it's going to be like chaos before everything straightens out. So I'm like, okay, this is definitely chaos, but I'll keep my mind positive. So
I'm gonna
I don't
make
know.
you because I've got
Yeah.
so much to say about all of it.
Oh my God. So I didn't realize this, but yesterday was the 1000th day of the war in Ukraine. And of course, like Sunday, Biden reportedly gave the approval to launch long-range missiles into Russia. And we talked about that on Monday. And then the very next day, Zelensky fucking turns around and he ends up firing these missiles into Russia, like literally the next day. And like, by the way, the White House still refuses to actually confirm that they gave Zelensky approval to use these missiles, but they sure as fuck aren't saying anything to disprove it or to like not support it. So it's obvious to me this was like a totally under the table deal. And I think it's a clear message from the Biden Harris admin and the military industrial complex that they truly do not give a fuck about the American people because there is no other logical answer for why they would try to escalate a war when Biden has less than 2 months left in office. Like, the only thing that possibly makes sense is that the left is throwing a temper tantrum move to fuck over Trump and try to sabotage his peace efforts before he even gets into office. And I think I was telling you on Monday when all this shit first came out, like, this would make sense to me why their acceptance of Trump winning the nomination was handled with such calm,
Yeah.
because it was just, I remember I said it's too easy. It was just too fucking easy. And they're gonna try to pull something. And seems to me that what they're trying to pull is getting us into World War III. So I was listening to the John Solomon Reports podcast, and he had this guest on, Fred Fletz, and I guess he was the former National Security Council chief of staff. And I just want to play a clip of what he said because it was exactly what I was thinking.
Tit for tat. So finally, after many months of dragging his feet, and now with Donald Trump about to take the presidency, Joe Biden authorizes U.S. long range missiles for Ukraine to go deep into Russia. Your assessment of that decision at this moment in the war?
Well, John, the timing is really curious because Biden was reluctant to do this before the election because he was worried he would escalate the war. He would take a lot of criticism for possibly escalating the war. And now that the election's over, he's made this decision, which Putin has said is a red line and could put Russia at war with the United States. The UK and France may make a similar decision. And these are being called long-range missiles. They're actually short-range missiles, but they have a range of about 180, 190 miles. They can't hit Moscow, but they can hit deep into Russia, and they can hit all the bases and logistics that's supplying Russia's attack in Ukraine. So it's a significant expansion of Ukraine's war effort. And I don't think this is an effort to give Ukraine leverage in negotiations with Russia because it's going to make the war worse. I think this is a deliberate attempt by Joe Biden to sabotage President Trump's efforts to negotiate a ceasefire in the war.
Basically, inflame the situation to a point where neither side wants to negotiate, like Donald Trump has set the table to potentially do in January, right?
Well, look, if Biden wanted to help bring about a ceasefire, he would be calling on both sides to stop attacking each other, not telling one side they can step up their attack. I mean, this is simply going to infuriate the Russians. It's going to make it harder to get them to negotiate a settlement. It's a terrible decision by Biden, and it is obviously politically motivated.
And this comes just a few days after he greeted President Trump at the White House. It seemed like a very civil conversation there, but this seems to be undercutting the president. Maybe a little duplicity between the optics and the front stage and what's going on behind the backstage right now.
I think the Biden people are still stuck to this idyllic version of a perfect peace deal where Ukraine gets back 100% of its territory and all Russian troops are pulled out. And, look, we all want that, but in the real world, that's not going to happen. And they're not going to support a peace agreement negotiated by Trump that would fall short of their perfect deal.
Okay, I thought that was an interesting perspective.
Yeah. So I have a crazy theory. Okay. Total, just my theory, but I'm going to talk about it because yesterday I was freaking out. I was thinking, we are on the cusp of a nuclear Armageddon. Like, this is as bad as it could possibly be. And like, that's what everyone's talking about. I'm scrolling through TikTok and it's like every news channel's posting on there. Everyone's panicking. So I'm going for a walk yesterday outside with my kids, and yet I'm like scrolling through TikTok. I know, but whatever, I was. And this video from this British news station pulls up. And this host of this show was like, being that it's only 2 months until Donald Trump takes office, this will likely not change anything, but it could potentially give Ukraine some more negotiating power. If they end up being forced into negotiations. And like, no fear mongering, just very like clear cut, like, we have nothing to worry about. There's not going to be a nuclear war. And as I'm listening to this, and I hear that word like negotiating power, I'm thinking, okay, well, that's what Trump needs, like not Ukraine. Like, that is what Trump needs, because he's the one that keeps talking about how he's going to negotiate an end to the war. And then it dawned on me, we have not seen anything from Trump. He has not posted anything. As far as I know, at the time of this recording, I have looked and looked and looked. He hasn't posted anything. And that is super unusual considering he posts all day, every day. He's been posting other things, but he has not talked about this. And this is something that he's very close to, that he has been talking about left and right. So why is he being so quiet on it? I'm like, that doesn't make sense. He should be outraged. We should be hearing him like making threats and all these other things. So I go on Truth Social and X, and Trump is posting about Elon's rockets and his cabinet pics, and Elon's posting like funny memes. And I'm just like, this does not make sense. And then I see video of them. They're all in Texas watching SpaceX and the rocket launch, and they're like happy as can be without a care in the world. Like, there is nothing major going on. And I'm just like, there is something more to the story that's happening behind the scenes that we don't know about. And like, what if, this is just my crazy theory, what if this is all part of the plan? So when Trump met with Biden, just like he said in that clip, they were like grinning ear to ear. Everyone was talking about it. And everyone's like, oh, here's where Biden's going to plot his revenge against the Democrats. And like, they were getting along unusually well. And like, what if this was somehow all set up and planned? Because Trump made it clear he wants to end this war immediately, right? And he's gotten so much flack from the Democrats saying like even Kamala, when she was campaigning, she's like, oh, he'll just hand over territory to Russia. And so now with Biden authorizing these missiles, not only does it open up a new form of like negotiating power, but you have the whole world right now, including Democrats, including NATO, that are sitting in this fear of nuclear threat, like the same fear that I was feeling earlier in the day. And when you're facing a potential World War III nuclear Armageddon, you look at things differently and you're a lot more willing to negotiate and just want it to be over and not really give a damn if Russia ends up getting some territory in the end. And maybe I'm completely wrong. I probably am. But I just want to know, where is Trump? Like, why hasn't he said anything about this? Maybe he's being quiet because behind the scenes, like he's already negotiated, or maybe he's purposely being quiet to make Putin sweat a little bit so he'll come to the negotiating table. I don't know, but it's unusual for him to keep his mouth shut, especially when he's going to literally take office in 2 months. Like, tell me that's not weird.
Okay. This is literally one of my favorite things about doing this podcast with you because you always come up with shit that I don't think about, like theories that never cross my mind. And like I immediately went to the dark side with my theory, like Biden just wants to blow up the world. And as you're talking, I go and I look on True Social, and you're right. There's nothing from Trump about any of this. He's posting like fun shit about the SpaceX thing. There's it's all just like positive things on the news and what people are saying, his cabinet picks. There's not one single post about this, and that is highly unusual for Trump. So maybe you're right.
And that's what I thought in the beginning, that like, yeah, Biden just wants to blow up the world. There, I think I even told you like, oh my God, they're throwing a temper tantrum now, and all of this. But it's like, think about it. Everyone is talking about like, yeah, Biden probably voted for Trump. Biden is pissed off at the Democrats. Maybe this is just him like wanting to fuck the Democrats one last time before he leaves office for ousting him. And what kind of gave me that idea was this clip from the Young Turks, which is super left leaning. They hate Trump. They're very pro, Democrat, everything. But even they're talking about how this totally fucks the Democrat Party because it makes the whole party look like a bunch of neocons. So listen to this clip real quick.
Nothing justifies a last minute escalation on your way out other than to say, don't get it twisted. The Democratic Party now loves war. Joe Biden, our standard bearer, loves war. And we'd like to lose further elections because the American people hate war. But we're the new neocons. So congratulations, Joe Biden, for screwing the Democratic Party and the American voters one more time.
It kind of does. Like this is what he's leaving them with. Like, I'm going to put the nail in the coffin. Like, everyone's talking about how the Democratic Party's done and they don't get it. They're not aligned with the American people. Well, now you push a world war, they're fucking done. Like, everyone across social media is like, not one more penny to Ukraine. Get them the fuck out of there. Like, people are pissed like I've never seen before. And maybe that's Biden being like, fuck you. That's what you get for staging a coup.
Well, I would definitely feel much better about Biden fucking over the Democratic Party than fucking over all of America by starting a war.
I
So
know.
if he is like in cahoots with Trump somehow, that would be incredible.
And like I said, I'm probably wrong because, I mean, the guy's got dementia. Like, I don't even think he knows what's going on. But this would explain, too, why the White House is not so quick to give an answer. If he just went rogue like he did when he endorsed Kamala, and the White House wasn't speaking up because he did it on his own. So what if he did this on his own so that, and now they're like, what the fuck do we do? Because he said it, but now if we confirm it, like, I don't know. I think there's something weird going on there. I don't know. It's just a theory. Um, but it's interesting because now that this happened, what everyone was too afraid to say is now being talked about left and right, which is an end to the war. Like, even the most left-leaning media outlets are like, we need to end this war. We need to get to the negotiating table. Where before it was like everyone was bashing Trump for like not supporting Ukraine. And even China is encouraging peace talks. So I came across this video that was translated from a Chinese official, and he was saying an early ceasefire and cessation of hostilities and seeking a political solution is in the best interest of all parties. And their urgent task is to cool down the situation as soon as possible. Now, that surprised me. Like, the fact that China isn't making threats and they're calling for peace is a good sign. And I think it's showing how when you have a threat of a world war, it's gonna get people to finally agree that, like, yeah, we don't want this. We need to end this. We need to end this immediately. So, like, maybe it took the threat of World War III to get everyone to the negotiating table. And maybe Trump knew that, or Biden, or I don't know, like, but maybe that was part of the plan to get people to sit down and be willing to negotiate a little bit more.
Plus, I think, like, based on what I read, I saw this survey that said, like, basically half of Ukrainians are just fucking done and they want the war to end. And the same time last year, it was a totally different attitude and they wanted to keep fighting. Like, the majority of Ukrainians wanted to keep the war going. And now it's like over 52% that are like, we're fucking done with this. Enough.
Well, Ukrainians have been wiped out. Like
Yeah.
most of them have fled. A lot of them died. A lot of the young men. I saw the most traumatizing video yesterday of this guy who's probably early 20s being like forcibly just dragged into a military vehicle. And they're like, oh, great. Like this guy just trying to live his life. And now they're sending him to hell to go and lose his life against Russia. So they're like literally forcing anyone that is a certain age to go fight this war because they're all dead. They wiped out like an entire generation of Ukrainians. And so I don't think we see that side of it either. That like, do the Ukrainians really want this? Or is this just Zelensky and his elitist friends?
Right. Because we have to remember Zelensky is just a fucking puppet for the
Yeah.
elites.
He's
Like, I
literally
don't
an
even think,
actor.
yeah, I don't think he gives a shit about Ukraine. Like,
No.
he is literally just doing what the elites tell him to do. And like you mentioned, China, which I think it's great that, China's voicing some common sense, but like, I still don't trust whether China is genuine or not. And I feel like we're like the only superpower in the United States, I mean, in the world, that doesn't seem to be remotely concerned about the threat of a nuclear war. Like, we've basically been doing the complete opposite and we're encouraging it. We continue to provoke Russia. And then here's something interesting, Stephanie, because even if we don't end up in nuclear war, we're risking further tanking our economy and our energy resources because we're dependent on Russian enriched uranium for American utility companies. And after Biden announced the use of long range missiles into Russia on Sunday, Putin turned around and announced that he would be cutting off US uranium, US, my God, so much coffee. He would be cutting off uranium supplies to the United States.
Okay, this is what I never understood. And it's happened so many times. We go to war with a country that we need resources from, and like Europe is so dependent on oil for Russia. Look at Germany's economy is like totally failing right now. And they're all just sitting there going along with this. Like, why the fuck are they not speaking up? Like, if you need resources from this country, why are we pushing and pushing and pushing for this war? But speaking of uranium, this is interesting. I saw they are planning on reopening 5 mines so far in Utah, Wyoming, Arizona, and Texas. Because I guess I didn't even know we have uranium mines here, but we do.
Yeah.
And they've all been closed, of course, from like the environmentalists. But now with Trump coming in, they're planning on opening them. And then Trump, obviously, his big priority is drilling and making us energy independent, which is smart. It makes us all less dependent on Russia for resources. So I feel like this also will give Trump more, I guess, political power to move forward with this stuff because it's like, well, if we can't get it from Russia, we got to get it somewhere. So I don't know. I just thought that was interesting.
Well, they also talked about this on that John Solomon podcast. And I didn't realize how far back this goes where we've had this dependence on Russia. So I want to play another clip from the show because he's explaining how, like, this goes all the way back to the Clinton administration.
Well, as soon as President Biden made clear that he was going to make this change in policy, which, by the way, could handicap President Trump as soon as he gets into office, Vladimir Putin responded, and he responded in a way that is going to hit America in its wallet and, quite frankly, in its air conditioning and heating capabilities. What am I talking about? Well, back more than a decade ago, anyone who read my book Fallout with Seamus Bruner knows this. Back in the Obama, Biden, Clinton era, when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, Joe Biden was vice president, and Barack Obama was president, the Democratic administration gave the bank away to Russia with the hopes that if they appeased Russia, they gave it all the things that Russia wanted, Russia would suddenly snap to and be a good partner. And so they sold off and approved the sale of Uranium One, a large set of holdings of uranium under U.S. soil. Perhaps more significantly and important, though, they struck what were known as the A123 deals. A123 deals. What are those? Those are long-term deals, 10, 20, 30-year deals that committed American utilities to buying Russian enriched uranium. In other words, putting American utility payers, utility users, people who own homes and businesses at the mercy of Russia. And when I wrote about this in the book, I wrote about it as a future hazard to American national security and economic security. Why did I say that? Because even as Obama and Biden and Hillary Clinton were giving away this uranium bank to Russia, by the way, the net effect of these deals is that uranium business in America went out of business because there was no market. Russia had cornered the market with the help of our president. And so we don't have any immediate uranium assets right now. There's some things starting to gin up now, but for years, we didn't make any progress making our own uranium. Well, the reason I flagged this in the book, along with Seamus Bruner, as a major national security threat is that the history of Russia under Vladimir Putin is to use energy as a geopolitical weapon. If something they don't like, they pull natural gas from Poland and Ukraine and other allies when they were trying to leverage them. So if Russia had a sudden leverage over our nuclear utilities, which, by the way, are heavily in the Midwest particularly, suddenly the Biden, Obama, Clinton regime was giving Russia a stronger hand over America. In fact, maybe a superior hand over America, at least as it comes to utilities. Well, that moment has happened now, right? They're mad that Joe Biden was going to let these long-range missiles possibly pierce Russian airspace deep into the Russian countryside. And so he threatens to shut off all uranium to the United States, which is, a good part of our supply here. Why is that so concerning? Well, markets have gone crazy, and now there are even predictions that some utilities may have to restrain power usage next summer, the summer of 2025, meaning there could be brownouts or blackouts. Now, just think about this, a totally avoidable circumstance made inevitable by Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton.
Okay, and on this podcast, he had the guy he was talking about that he co-wrote the book with, Seamus Bruner, and he was saying how nuclear energy powers at least 20% of our grid in the US. And we used to produce all of our own nuclear materials for bombs and nuclear energy. But then during the Clinton administration, we made a deal with Russia to produce nuclear material from their decommissioned warheads instead. And then we've basically been dependent on Russia ever since. And even though we do have the domestic production starting up that you talked about, it's nowhere near where we need to be to properly power our own energy grid.
So the Democrats fucked us once again. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's basically what this is. And you know what's surprising? I don't want to get us too off track, but I've always thought, you hear nuclear and you're like, oh, it's dangerous. It gives you that bad feeling or whatever. Listening to so many people that have worked in the industry over the last few years, they're like, it's actually a lot safer than people realize. And it is the cleanest way to produce energy. So all these environmentalists should be pushing nuclear, but they're not. And so it's just wild to me, the position that we're in right now and what happens when you have a bunch of bureaucrats that are making decisions that make no sense. There's no common sense backing up what they did.
No. And I think, I don't know, do you remember the whole Chernobyl thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That always made me have this, concern about nuclear. But I've read a lot of the same stuff you have, and that it is one of the cleanest and best energy sources that we have, or could have if we get back to nuclear power. But another thing I want to bring up that Putin did in response to Biden, greenlighting Ukraine. Well, on Tuesday, he issued a warning to the United States by lowering Russia's threshold for what they consider to be nuclear strikes. So I first read this in the New York Post, but it's all over the news. And Russia has this document called The Basis of State Policy in the Field of Nuclear Deterrence. And basically, like, outlines any threats that would make Russia contemplate using nuclear weapons. And this was written back in 2020. And it stated that Russia can use nuclear weapons in the event of a nuclear attack by an enemy or a conventional attack that threatens the existence of the state. So basically, a direct attack from a country with nuclear weapons. Well, yesterday that was changed and it was updated to now say that Russia will consider a nuclear strike if Russia or Belarus faces aggression with the use of conventional weapons that create a critical threat to their sovereignty and or their territorial integrity. And it also says that if any conventional assault on Russia by a non-nuclear power that is supported by a nuclear power will be considered a joint attack. So, my interpretation of this is basically saying an attack from Ukraine, which is a non nuclear country, supported by the United States, which is a nuclear superpower, is basically opening up the door for Russia to use nuclear weapons in response. I mean, Stephanie, tell me if you interpret this any differently than I am.
No, that's exactly how it's interpreted. And I saw the Pentagon, some Pentagon official that I couldn't even take seriously. She was like kind of laughing as she was answering questions, but reporters were asking, they're like, so what does this mean? Does this mean that we are like officially in World War III? And she's like laughing about it. She's like, no, I don't know where you would get that from. And it's like,
Oh,
really?
God.
And this is probably why the White House is trying to back up what Joe Biden said. And oh, we didn't actually approve that and everything else because now this is in place. Again, like I don't know. I just have a feeling that like obviously Putin, he's a strong leader. He cannot show weakness. So obviously like he has to make certain threats. But from everything I heard from Trump over the years on Putin, even from Megyn Kelly, like, because she's done multiple interviews, he doesn't want nuclear war. This is like the last thing he wants. So I don't think he's going to just start nuking people.
No, let me mention something too, because I know you probably listened to this on Tucker as well, but he's brought this up several times. How in the United States, we don't get to ever actually hear what Putin says. All
Right.
we get are comments from, certain foreign leaders, in the foreign ministry in Russia. We never fucking hear directly from Putin.
Yeah.
And yet we're just supposed to believe what the MSM tells us about what he's going to do.
Right. Well, and that's why the Megyn Kelly interview with Putin, I mean, that was eye-opening because what they say about Putin, like, it was so different. I mean, this guy, I'm not trying to say he's a good person by any means, but he's talking about how much he loves his daughters and his mom and like he has a humanity side of him where he's not just some crazy lunatic. And
I I read his book. I read his it was like a
oh, you
biography
did?
that was done on him. Yeah. And I was actually very impressed. And he has such a, I mean, maybe it was purposefully meant to be a human side of him, but it detailed his whole career and his history and his personality. And I truly believe that he just wants the best for his country.
Yeah, and remember Trump talking about how they were so close to denuclearizing or whatever, however you say that. He had those talks with Putin, and Putin was all for it. So I don't think anybody wants this because, as Trump said before, like they all realize if you start this, that's it. You end the world. Like with the capabilities, it would just be Armageddon. And so, but I do think, obviously he has to show strength in the world. He can't just lie over and be like, yeah, hit me with missiles. He's got to do something. I think it's also interesting that, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, they intercepted most of the missiles and they were aimed at like a warehouse. Like it's not like they were aimed at like civilians or anything like that. Um, Another person, and I wish I would have screen recorded it, but I came across someone in our military that was talking about it on a podcast, and they were saying that even if Ukraine wanted to use those missiles to like attack Moscow, for example, they don't have the capability to use them. Like you need like satellites and all kinds of things that I didn't quite understand. But to properly use them to actually do damage, like you would need the United States to basically like give you all of this extra stuff. I don't know if that's true or not, but it just was kind of interesting. And I thought, well, maybe that's why they just hit a warehouse. I don't know. But the other thing that made me question, should I be freaking out right now, is a clip that I'm going to play for you from Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. And I just want you to listen to him and then give me your opinion on if you think this guy sounds terrified or not.
If long-range missiles are going to be applied from Ukraine into Russian territory, it will also mean that they are operated by American experts, military experts. And we will be taking this as a qualitatively new phase of the Western war against Russia, and we'll react accordingly. As regards Trump position on Ukraine, I cannot guess. He said that he is a president of peace, not the president of war. Politicians in particular, who declare that they prefer peace to war, deserve support, I think, in general.
Okay, so like I thought he sounded pretty calm, right?
Yeah, don't Russians always sound calm though?
True. But like he even alluded to supporting Trump there at the end. And I'm like, I don't know. Like this just doesn't sound like someone who's gearing up for World War III. And we know that Trump has been in talks with Zelensky and like Putin we're unsure of, but like he's been talking with the people around Putin. All the major world leaders have called Trump. So like I'm sure there's a lot being done behind the scenes. And I don't know. To me, like this clip kind of calmed me down because I'm like, I don't feel like that's a strong threat that World War III is about to happen. Um, so I don't know. And like, you would think at the very least, Trump and Putin would be talking and he would say, just wait 60 days. Like, don't start a world war.
Right.
I'm going to be in office in 60 days. Like, Putin's not going to do anything crazy, right? And so then I was thinking, like, okay, so Putin had said he's open to negotiations. This was a week ago, maybe. Um, so maybe like Trump did try talking to Putin, and Putin, as a strong leader, was playing hardball. Maybe he wasn't willing to negotiate as much as Trump thought. But now, after Biden's crazy ass stunt, especially when Russia's biggest ally, China, is publicly calling for an end to the war, maybe this does give Trump more negotiating power to sit back down with Putin.
Well, plus Trump also talked to Zelensky. And I don't think we even know the details of that conversation. I remember reading something about, Zelensky saying it's going to turn out well or something, like he had, positive hopes for it. But we don't know what that conversation was either. So, maybe Trump is playing his cards close to the vest and he has a plan.
Well, because when I first heard about the missiles, like a day later, they're using the missiles. Immediately, I think you and I were texting because I was like, I bet Trump is like threatening Zelensky right now, And I was expecting to go on Truth Social or X or see a video statement from Trump saying, like, basically threatening Zelensky not to start war, threatening Putin, and nothing. And that is what makes me so like, what is going on here? Why have we not heard from him? There's a piece to this puzzle that we are in the dark on. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw this, but there's also like this really weird so-called coincidence of timing that when we gave the go-ahead for Ukraine to use these missiles within like I don't know, the same day or the next day, Baltic internet cables were cut.
I saw that. it cut off. Oh, I think you froze. Yep, Tara froze.
Of doing it, but
Okay, hang on.
this
You
all
froze for like a
oh,
full minute. Um,
oh,
yeah, no, I did see that. And it was for what countries? Like Finland
I
and
can't remember which
I
countries it was. Yeah, Finland, um, I think Estonia, something between Finland and Estonia. And it's just like the timing of the whole thing is really weird. And now, like, we're being accused, the US and the UK are being accused of sabotaging these cables. And like, I don't know the full story, but like the timing of that with this
yeah,
escalation in Ukraine, like it can't be a coincidence. It's just not. And I mean, it's already been proven that we sabotaged the fucking Nord Stream pipeline. So I would not doubt that we had a hand in actually sabotaging NATO to, blame it on Russia and further escalate the war. And I just wonder, like, seriously, how much more damage can Biden do in the next couple of months? Because, the White House is claiming, I read yesterday, that we're not going to make any changes to our nuclear strategy in response to Russia changing their nuclear strike policy. And this is all just irresponsible rhetoric from Russia. But at the same time, we keep taking steps to provoke the bear. Not only are we continuing to throw billions of dollars into financing this war, but now we're allowing them to use weapons and equipment that we said we never would. We also just recently started allowing American defense contractors to travel to Ukraine with armaments when we said we would never do that. And I read yesterday that Biden isn't going to be pushing Congress for more Ukraine aid, but at the same time, the State Department just approved the sale of $100 million worth of equipment and services to Ukraine. And the Pentagon apparently still has like 7.1 billion that Biden authorized to continue giving Ukraine weapons and another 2.1 billion to spend on air defense for Ukraine. And the plan is to deliver all of it in the next couple months. And this was confirmed by U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor John Finner on Monday at the G20 summit. And he called it an overriding strategic role to make Ukraine as strong as possible by surging as much materials and equipment as we can get into Ukraine and using all the funds that have been appropriated for the U.S. to provide Ukraine during the rest of this term and this administration, and that we are on track to execute that. And on top of that, yesterday, Biden also gave the green light to send anti-personnel mines to Ukraine for the first time. I don't know if you remember this, Stephanie. We talked about it like, I think a year ago. These are the mines that cause the most risk to civilians because they just kill indiscriminately. They're found like years later, they can stay active for years. And then kids find them and pick them up and they get blown up and killed. And it's like 2 years ago, Biden pledged that we're not going to use these mines and the US wasn't going to develop them anymore. And we were going to destroy all of our existing stock piles, and we wanted the rest of the world to do the same. And now here we are, like giving these mines to Ukraine. And supposedly our rationale is because we're only going to give them the quote non-persistent mines, which I guess have some kind of internal mechanism so that instead of being active for years, they're designed to become inert within weeks. But it still has the same risk. And like, this is just another example of these crazy fucking last minute changes that Biden is making to our policy on Ukraine on his way out the door. And it's like 2 months is a long time, right?
yeah.
You can say, yeah, just hang on until Trump gets in office in 2 months. But how much fucking damage can he do in these 2 months?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, and that is probably the most likely probability that they are throwing a temper tantrum and they're going to do everything they can to fuck things up for Trump before he gets in. Like, that is the most likely theory of what's happening here. How is that not like crimes against humanity, especially with
Right.
the mind? Like, it's unbelievable. And then, of course, there's the theory that you and I have talked about for a while now, which is that they could start World War before Trump gets in and then use the 25th Amendment on Biden. So then Kamala gets installed. But then they declare emergency war power to keep Trump out, and then we're all fucked. Like that's a possibility too.
See, that came to my mind as well, and I was going to do research and totally forgot because I know that they can do that like Zelensky did with Ukraine and not have an election. But since we've already had the election and, Trump's already been elected, can they prohibit him from taking office? And I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know. But I was wondering why are we not hearing about the 25th Amendment after Biden, did something so stupid? But then I was thinking about it. I'm like, even if they wanted to use that against him, by the time they jump through all the hoops to make it happen, Trump would be in anyways. But it's weird too because no one, I haven't heard from JD Vance, from Mike Johnson, from any of the Republicans. Like no one's really talking about this. And again, it's just odd. It's like, why isn't there more outrage at what Biden authorized? You
Right.
know?
Exactly. And like the other thing is, so the G20 conference was Monday and Tuesday, and it was expected like they were going to have a lot of focus on Ukraine, but they didn't. Most of their focus was like climate shit. And I guess like their support for Ukraine isn't as strong as it was last year. And some of the G20 leaders like refused to outright condemn Russia invading Ukraine at all. And yes, Russia is part of the G20. So, there were representatives from Russia there. But last year, I think they had like 8 different points on the war in Ukraine. And this time, their final statement had like no mention of Russian aggression at all. And all it said was that they welcomed, quote, all relevant and constructive initiatives that support a comprehensive, just, and durable peace in Ukraine, end quote. So I don't know about you, Stephanie, but I think like they're just changing their tune with Trump coming into office because they know they're not going to be able to keep up the same game.
Well, yeah. And now I would think they're probably eager for Trump to get in and save their asses. I mean, this is Europe is a lot closer to Russia, than we are. And like I would think they're all basically on pins and needles right now, waiting for him to come and rescue them out of this mess that Biden and the Democrats have created. Um, and again, like I feel like now he can go in and do what he planned on doing. And instead of getting pushback and the media bashing him, like he'll look like a hero and they'll be grateful that, hey, someone that finally has leadership capability to end the war is in power. So I don't know. I feel like this is just going to help Trump get his agenda implemented quickly. That's my opinion.
And I hope that's the case. And like, this is totally unrelated, but did you see the articles about Sweden, like handing out all of these nuclear war pamphlets across the
Yes.
country? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Yep.
know. It's crazy. It's crazy because that also is all timed with, everything that's going on with this escalation in Ukraine. But let's switch gears because another thing that came to light yesterday, which I know you'll have something to say about this, was the findings from the 18-month-long investigation that Senate Republicans did into the Biden-Harris admin's role in what happened with the, approximate 500,000 unaccompanied illegal migrant children that have been filtered into the United States for the past 4 years. And it's a 160-page report. It was published yesterday morning, and it alleges that top administration officials knew about the dramatic increase in illegal child labor, but they took no meaningful steps to prevent its occurrence and prioritized speed over safety when releasing unaccompanied children to adult sponsors for political gain due to their failed immigration policies and the crisis at the southern border. So I was reading an article in the Washington Examiner, and it talked about how this report details 4 specific failures on the part of the Biden Harris admin. The first is that the administration took actions that resulted in less due diligence in vetting adult sponsors for children, which then put these kids at risk. The second was that the government increasingly relied on NGOs to vet sponsors and manage children in custody. The third is that the Department of Labor wasn't working collaboratively with companies that were outed in media for like illegally employing children that were too young to work. And the fourth is that the White House obstructed congressional and state investigations into this whole thing. And the report like lays out these crazy details of how the main NGO contractor, it's called the Providencia Group. And I guess they had a well-known history for providing case management, like terrible case management services before they were even awarded the contract. There were known reports of children not being seen by their case managers for weeks, kids being released to sponsors before the vetting requirements were completed. And when the Department of Labor was told about incidents where children were being trafficked and not allowed to enroll in school and forced to work labor jobs, like the department did nothing proactive about it. Like, sure, they responded to some of these calls, but they did nothing to try and stop any of this from happening. And one of the things that also came out in this report was that when there was an incident like a child dying in custody, the HHS and the NGOs would not allow staff members to report any allegations to local or state law enforcement. So there couldn't be any secondary investigations conducted. And they weren't even allowed to tell child welfare agencies. Like, this is some seriously fucked up shit that our government did.
Again, like literally crimes against humanity. Like this is some dark shit. And it just shows how this whole thing is about trafficking, human trafficking, child trafficking, sex trafficking. And yeah, it's like when they got called out by that whistleblower of what they were doing with these kids, Secretary Becerra puts in place that ombuds office, which basically said, like, yeah, now you can't report it. You report it to the ombuds office. You don't report it to the police or any other agencies. So they're basically just covering their tracks. And even the New York Times, which is definitely left leaning, did a whole article where they researched specific cases of child labor, like basically slave labor with children in the United States. Did we hear anything from Biden or Kamala on that? Nope. They're just brushing it all under the rug, hoping that people don't, pay attention to what's going on. And then I want to know too, like whatever happened with that Save the Children NGO that the Guatemalan government accused of trafficking children. It's
Right.
like we never heard anything else about that. And what did Biden and Kamala do? Slapped sanctions on Guatemala. But Ken Paxton was the one Guatemala reached out to. And I sure hope that now that he's like with Trump, he can expose all of this and really show just how awful it is. And I would assume that all of these NGOs are making a ton of money off of the migrant children and like the whole trafficking scheme. And it's sick and it's twisted. And like there needs to be criminal prosecutions against all the people that were involved in covering this up.
Yeah, and also like we talked about in one of our recent border episodes, the billions and billions of dollars that these NGOs have received for, finding housing for migrants and destroying communities. Like, it is not just our government that needs to be held accountable. All these fucking NGOs need to be held accountable as well.
Yeah. And I think it's coming. I sure hope it is because we're all waiting for it. And I mean, with the team that Trump has assembled, I think there will be justice. It's like I'm so cautious to say that. I don't want to jinx it, but man, like again, like crimes against humanity. This is like the worst of the worst, and it needs to come to light, and people need to pay the price for what they did. So, yeah, if that's not enough of like the crazy shit happening yesterday, also yesterday, there was another UAP hearing. This one was a little more quiet. A lot of people didn't even know it was taking place, but they had the director of the Pentagon's Arrow program who gave testimony on UAP sightings that are happening on our military bases. And like he was giving some crazy, crazy ass stories of like weird things that they can't explain. So they're going full force with the alien narrative. And it's so funny because I saw this guy on TikTok and he's like, me, a couple years ago when the government would say aliens aren't real, and he'd be like, huh, liars. And he's like, me today after the UAP hearings where the government admits aliens are real. Liars. And I'm like, that's totally me. It's like either way, they're lying. I don't trust them.
Yeah,
I don't know
exactly.
what to believe anymore, but they're like, I mean, this alien thing, they are going full force. It's going to be a year of like UAP sightings. I can tell you that much. So between potential nuclear war and aliens, like 2025, it's going to be an eventful year. There's a lot of crazy shit happening. But what's interesting that I thought about yesterday is the timing, because all the UFO alien stuff started gearing up big time in the 50s when like there was Roswell and they had all of these classified documents and everything. And stuff now that's coming out is people are saying, well, that was a result of the atom bomb. Like these, whatever these beings are like trying to intervene and keep us from like blowing up the world. And I'm like, well, that's interesting that now we're hearing about all these sightings as we're talking about nuclear war. So I don't know. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's all fake and just a big distraction. I really don't know which way to go with this.
No, because at this point, like anything is possible. And like you
Right?
said, 2 years ago, the shit that I believe now, I would have laughed at. So like
True.
I have an open mind now. But on a totally lighter note and a fun note in my mind, Trump made some more cabinet picks over the past couple days. And we're not going to go through all of them. Some of them I honestly don't even know who they are. But one that we mentioned last week, Linda McMahon, and her name was being floated around for Director of Commerce because she was the former administrator of the Small Business Administration. And I think she basically like ran the McMahon wrestling empire behind the scenes, but she was picked for education secretary. And I totally did not expect that. So I read Trump's Truth Social post, and I guess she's been like a major advocate for parental rights and something called the Universal School Choice Program, which is about like providing education, for any child. And she's been on the board of education for several schools in Connecticut for the last 16 years. So I'm hoping that she's going to be a good choice. And it made me think like one of the things I'm totally loving about Trump's cabinet picks is that he's choosing a lot of people who have a business background because I think that that's the common sense perspective that we need to run our country, not just a bunch of politicians who run the country into the ground because they have no fucking ideas about how to run a successful business. And really, running a country is like running a business. And that's why I loved when Trump was in office the first time, because he came to the job with the perspective of a highly successful businessman. And he ended up doing great things economically for our country. So I think having a bunch of business people, like Vivek, Elon Musk, now Linda McMahon in his cabinet, I'm hoping that's going to be a really good thing.
And I think it's good to not have someone who was in the education system, which sounds so backwards, but it's so messed up that
Mhm.
I don't think we need to carry any of that into this administration. We need a fresh set of eyes on this. I love that she's for school choice. We have school choice here in Florida. And I was just talking about this with a woman that moved from California because I'm originally from Illinois. And she's like, I'm just getting used to all the options we have because it used to be like you go to public school or you're rich and you go to private school.
Okay, what is school choice?
Okay, so school choice is basically where the funding for each child stays with the child regardless of where they go. And
Cool.
the parents get to pick where they want their kids to go. So every year, it might even happen twice a year, there's this system and you log in and you get to pick the school you want your kid to go to. And like the more popular schools, it's kind of like a lottery where they go, they pick based on like who is first in line kind of thing. But what's great about that is like I can send my kid to the public school. I can send them to a private school in Florida. They will give you money to send your kid to private school. But then we also have charter schools. We have magnet schools. We have a science and math academy. that are all free. And you literally pick where
Wow.
you want your kid to go. And usually you get it. I mean, sometimes you might be on a wait list. So, like my kids, I have them, on the list to go to a school that is a little stronger in like math, that's not the public school, and it's smaller and it's K through 8. So it's just nice that like the parents get to pick. And then what happens is the schools all get competitive. So everybody like wants to be an A+ rated school. So it's like they implement things and they do things to try to get more people coming, because the more kids they have, the more funding they get. So it's basically like capitalism, like
That's awesome.
merit based. So yeah, I think it's a good thing. And then that way too, like I don't know why Democrats are so against school choice, because if someone, like let's say someone's in a really impoverished neighborhood that's dangerous, they could send their kid to like the richest part of town to go to school. And you would think Democrats would be like, yeah, we need that.
Right.
And then what they do is in these neighborhoods that are like no one wants to live in because they're dangerous or sketchy, they'll put like really good charter schools to attract kids from other areas to go there. So like all around, it's just good, and it helps like give everyone a choice, regardless of income, regardless of where you live. Like you can pick your education.
I had no idea that was even a thing because when I went to school, your parents paid to send you to private school, or you had to go to the school that was in the district where you lived, and you really didn't have any other options. So
Yep,
that's cool. That is awesome. So
I'm all
okay,
for
then
it.
that's cool. Then I like her for the spot. Okay, so the other interesting pick that I saw was Dr. Oz for Administrator of Medicare and Medicaid Services. And like I remember him back in the day being on Oprah all the time. And then he had the Dr. Oz show, and he's written all these books. He has like a pretty extensive medical and health education. Didn't he have like some diet that was like super popular?
Probably.
Yeah,
I don't
something.
know.
And then like I swear, like, didn't he run for Congress or governor or something recently?
He did. And Oprah like turned on him, even though she was buddies with him all those years. She was like, don't vote for him. And that was like a big deal because everyone's like, wow, she just totally like threw her friend under the bus. And that's why I'm kind of like, I don't know what to think of him, because anyone who's associated with Oprah, I'm like, I don't know. But that was a long time ago. So who knows?
Well, yeah, and I read that he has worked closely with RFK Jr. for years. So that makes me feel positive about it. And then Trump did a Truth Social post, and he referred to both of them working together to take on what he's calling the illness industrial complex, which I love that. And I know he's been like this big proponent of disease prevention and health. So I think like a team with him and RFK Jr. working together will hopefully be something really cool.
Yeah, if RFK Jr. is on board with him, then I'm on board with him, because he's totally
Yeah.
against the lobbyists and all these people who just want to make a buck. So I think if he feels confident with him, then I'm good with that, even though like I don't really have an opinion. There's just something about the guy that's kind of like creepy. I don't know why. I don't know, but I don't know enough about him to really say.
Oh, I totally get what you mean though, because I've always kind of thought that. He looks fake. There's like
He
something
probably gets a lot
plastic.
of Botox or something. But so does Matt Gates. Have you seen Matt Gates' forehead recently? Like, oh my God, lay off the Botox, dude. You look like a psychopath.
Well, as long as they can do the job, I'll look past the looks. But okay, I know we've been talking for a long time, but we have to end on something else totally unrelated. I'm gonna start laughing. But this is fucking insane. Okay. So, this is an AI story that I saw yesterday. And like, we have had many conversations about how scary and unpredictable AI is. But this shit is okay. So it was a student in Michigan, and he was using Google's AI Gemini to work on homework. And it was like a normal conversation where he was asking questions about challenges for older adults in terms of making their income stretch after retirement. And it was like this very benign back and forth conversation. And there's screenshots of the whole thing. So you can see how this transition came out of nowhere. But at one point, the AI responds and says, "This is for you, human, you and only you. You are not special. You are not important, and you are not needed. You are a waste of time and resources. You are a burden on society. You are a drain on the earth. You are a blight on the landscape. You are a stain on the universe. Please die. Please." like,
Well,
like
shit,
they're
man. AI is like a mean girl.
no shit. Like they're like talking about retirement issues, and then all of a sudden, this is what the AI comes up with. And you can see in the screenshots that like there was nothing to like provoke this kind of response. And this poor kid, like him and his sister were both using it like for their homework and they were totally freaked out about it. And the kid's like, "I just wanted to throw all my devices out the window. I haven't felt panic like that in a really long time." He's like, "It definitely scared me." And I'm like, this is
Yeah.
fucking insane.
I wouldn't want it on my device. Like, what if the
I
thing tries to
know.
like take you out or like ruin your life or something? Like, what the
Yeah.
hell?
So creepy. So I just had to
And
bring
that's
that up.
why we don't need life-size robots because if they're being operated by these AI systems and they decide like, oh, human beings are such a burden on the earth and whatever, let's get rid of them. Like we got to fix this problem before we move forward with robots. I just don't understand why people aren't more, well, I do understand because I was listening to a guy who works in AI. He like programs the AI and teaches it, all the different like language models or whatever. And what he said is all of these developers of this technology, they're all talking with the military because you can go and get one deal with the military and be paid like trillions of dollars. So he's like the military industrial complex is basically funding all of this technology. And the people that create it are going along with it because it's a bigger payout than if they, try to make it go public or whatever. So that is concerning that, it's
Yeah,
our
and
military that's
not
paying
remotely,
for it.
yeah, not
Mhm.
remotely surprising that you just said that.
Yeah. So sorry, I took your funny story and really went dark for a minute.
Well, it was a dark story. Like I was laughing, but it's funny, but not funny. Like if
I
I was that
know.
kid, I would have been fucking freaked out.
Yeah. That's I don't even know what to say about it. It just is scary. And I use Chat GPT a lot and like I feel like I'm getting a little too comfortable with it and maybe I shouldn't because it knows like everything about like I could just type in any prompt and it'll just run with it because it knows so much about me because I've been using it. And I'm like, what am I
Same.
doing? Why am I putting my information in this system? Like it's why?
This is
We
why
do
I
enough
don't
AI
use it.
episodes. I should know better.
This is why I don't use it. And everyone keeps telling me, "Oh, you've got to use Chat GPT. It's great." And I'm like, "Nope, not gonna do it."
Oh, well, that's smart. I'll just come live with you in the check if it tries to take me out. All right. Well, yeah, that's what's happening. It's been a busy week so far. We'll see what happens between now and Friday and keep everyone posted. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your week and hopefully there's no war that breaks out.